when we start to choose different decisions, it actually creates new behaviors, new baselines that actually serve us.
Hi, welcome to Resonate, Conversations and Life Lessons from Rancho La Puerta. I'm your host, Barry. One of the gifts that the ranch brings to our guests is the opportunity to disconnect from their day-to-day lives and focus on their internal environments. Many of our guests are leaders in their businesses, their companies, and their communities. Our co-founder, Deborah, believes that the ranch sends them back more kind, relaxed, and rejuvenated. She hopes this will create a ripple effect that will extend to all their relationships, both personal and professional. Today's guest, Jeff Benton, is the CEO and founder of Paragon Performance Evolution. His company's goal is to reach as many individuals and leaders as he can, providing them with tools to regulate their inner environments so they can lead from a place of coherence and well-being. It's a holistic approach to organizational health and productivity. Jeff's company has worked with Fortune 500 businesses, athletes, special forces, academic institutions, astronauts, and even the Rancho La Puerta management team. His company has partnered with the Heart Math Institute and focuses on research supporting the heart's role in maintaining both physical and emotional health. I look forward to today's conversation. Hi, Jeff. Thanks for taking time to talk to me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's an honor. You know, I'm a big fan of you and the ranch. I've only been 12 times, but...
How many times have you been?
I think it's 12, maybe 13. My dad's only been 39 times.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, but I'll beat his record one day.
Wow, that's awesome. So where you from? Where are you at today? Where are you?
I'm in Santa Monica, California. The ocean is right there. Not to rub it in.
It's a beautiful place to be. So Jeff, you are the CEO and founder of Paragon Performance Evolution.
Yes.
What is that exactly?
You know, I would say on paper, we create and implement programs specific to high performance, leadership, team dynamics. You know, we're really fortunate. We work with Fortune 500 and colleges and pro athletes, astronauts, global first ladies, and a number of other interesting folks. But at a higher level, why I really started Paragon was to really influence and increase consciousness and awareness of leaders. And I knew if we could create appealing programs for companies, it was the fastest way to impact a lot of people, right? Instead of individual. And as you know, the way our world has evolved, corporations have a lot of the power now, right? They're the power center for politics, for media, for healthcare, for education, and the environment. You know, we just see through our work as these leaders start to relate to themselves differently, they make better decisions for themselves, their companies, and humanity.
Now, that list that is pretty impressive that you work with athletes, you know, special forces. You forgot to mention Rancho La Puerta leadership because, you know, we're right up there.
The ranch, it has many special meanings, and it was such a gift because I have been going there so long. It's been such an oasis for me in so many ways. And you and Kristen and others, I've, you know, been fortunate to look up to. So it's been great leading some sessions.
When I was reading your list of people that you work with, there is a Global First Ladies Club. What is that?
So Cora Newman, who's amazing, created something called the Global First Ladies Alliance. And it originally started with mostly first ladies from Africa, but it's really expanded Canada, Mexico. I led a workshop for them last year at Columbia, and actually Jill Biden was supposed to be there, but she got delayed because of traffic and weather. And, you know, it's like lonely on top, right? And so these global first ladies are incredible. They're such bright lights, and they're having to, you know, take care of their staffs, their country, their
right.
spouses. And, we went back to the basics to say, the message was you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anybody else, right? If they're living in a stress response, they are truly limited in their ability to support others. Right. And that was the theme. And it was very highly received. So as we continue to do work with them, that is really one of the main focuses.
So I want to get into the kind of work you do, but before we do, let's go back a ways to talk about how you got to, like, when did you start the Paragon Performance Evolution, and how did you get to that point?
Yeah, it was, Paragon was inspired by a few things. The first thing was, growing up, I was a decent athlete, and my dad had one of the biggest sports marketing companies in the world. So they represented everybody from Michael Jordan to Jimmy Connors. They had hundreds of athletes. And I was always intrigued by what made somebody the best at what they did, right? And that was really in all fields. And I would say even a bigger motivation was, I grew up, my dad was on the East Coast, and we was definitely in my life, but I really grew up with a mother who I idolized, but was bipolar. And it was really up and down. And I think through a lot of trauma and violence growing up and moving to different locations, for whatever reason, I had the capacity to look like I had the perfect world to the outside. And for a while, I thought it was actually a gift. But as I got into the corporate world and got some great jobs early on, every time I got promoted, I had more anxiety, more fear, more anger, and this deep imposter syndrome. And it just kept going. And as a low point, my mother took her life, and I hit rock bottom, and I just couldn't hold up the facade anymore. So I started to do, I would say, people describe it maybe as a spiritual journey, but at the time I just didn't want to feel the way I was feeling. And I really started to do a lot of deep work, from shadow work. I was introduced to the Heart Math Institute, and I learned how to regulate. And I just remember really staying committed to these practices and even meditating. And then waking up one day, it was probably 3-4 months after doing it every day. And I remember for the first time probably ever feeling joy, presence, and deep gratitude. And I remember thinking, if I can go from totally disconnected and feeling like not even really sure why I'm having this human experience to feeling gratitude, joy, presence, anybody could. And I was like, okay, I want to then take this to others, especially people that are influencing thousands of lives. And again, like I said, as we see with my own journey, I knew if these leaders could relate to themselves differently, they'd make better decisions for themselves, their family, their teams, their communities, and humanity. Yeah. And so that was the path. And I think one of the things I have learned, and I share this sometimes in talks or with younger people. I used to take a lot of business courses and all that, thinking that would progress. But for me, every time I made a shift at a personal level and I developed emotionally, spiritually, mentally, that then there was a direct correlation to my professional success. Because we're all having this human experience, and it allowed for me to actually connect at a more deeper, authentic level. And from that, I was able to present better, I was able to have deeper relationships, bring on more clients.
You said it was like 3 or 4 months you had been doing this practice, and then one day you woke up and you felt gratitude and joy. What were you actually doing during those 3 months?
That's a great question. So I started meditating. At that point, I was doing TM. A friend of mine had introduced me to it. I was doing heart math. So I had the inner balance device, and I was actually tapping into this thing I didn't know called a heart. And, I started to feel self-regulated and actually started to open up to some feelings. And then the other thing was really doing shadow work. And this was very uncomfortable for me because growing up, emotions were not a good thing, right? It was nobody, like in my household, it wasn't acknowledged. It was actually a pain in the ass for everybody when I expressed myself. And two is I probably didn't feel like I deserved the good emotions, right? And so I started to do more of the shadow work where I would acknowledge my emotions, but not just acknowledge it. I would actually feel it and do somatic type things to move through it. And so one of the crazy things that I would do, that I actually have my clients do, is I had a wiffle bat. And when I felt anger, I would just beat my pillow, like to move through it, right? And we live in a society where we think if we're gonna, like if we do something like that, it's gonna bring up anger, rage, whatever, and we're gonna be out of control. But it's actually it's one of the most effective ways to actually move through it to then get to the other side of regulation. And I actually have clients do it now. If they're going to have a difficult conversation with somebody, it could be their client, their boss, their spouse, I will have them work out that energy a few times before. And they always come back to me and say, once they had that difficult conversation, they were totally present in a more loving state because they had worked out all that energy before. So they weren't trying to battle how they were showing up and their emotions in that moment while they were trying to have this important connection.
That's what shadow work is.
That's a form of it. And that's, yeah, it's really going to those places that we're trying to avoid. Again, this is my definition. I'm sure other people would have others, but we run from those things that make us uncomfortable, right? And so many of us have been taught that emotions aren't, that feeling negative emotions could be selfish or they're not good for us, but they're always going to manifest in other ways. And we have seen continually as our community, our clients acknowledge and move through their emotions, their health improves, their relationships, all of these other things.
It sounds like what you do with your clients, maybe I'm oversimplifying, is like you're kind of rehearsing the event you're going to go through before you go through it. And when you rehearse it, then whatever emotions or feelings might come out, they come out then during the rehearsal, so they don't come out during the actual event as intensely. Is that a good summary?
That's a good summary. That's one of the things we do. So I'll give you, it's actually a two-part, right? So let's say you're going to have a difficult conversation with your boss and you've got a lot of emotion around it. The first piece is, I would say, move through those emotions, right? Like it could be hitting something, it could be running, whatever it is, to honor it, to move it through. And then the second thing is we do something called a prep technique. And the setup for this is the brain does not know the difference between an actual experience and a memory of an experience, right? So we've talked about it where it works against us. So it's like when you have your boss, and this is not directed at your boss, but when you, let's use the mother-in-law or the boss, right? So when they're calling you and you see their number on your cell phone, you get a stress response, right?
Yes,
that person's not there, right? And so it's not serving us because you get the adrenaline, the cortisol, right? They're living in your head. But we can actually use this to our advantage. And so, if you have an important meeting, like let's say it's a week away, this prep technique is where you would actually visualize how you want to show up. And then you would connect positive renewing emotions with it. So I would say, okay, Barry, like I would lead you through a technique. I would have you connect with something that you love, like your daughter, a pet, whatever it is. And you would feel those emotions. And then I would have you visualize and feel those emotions while you're meeting with your boss, right? So you start to program the body that way. So by the time you've actually met with your boss, like your body doesn't know the difference, or brain, right? And you've created this. We do it with professional athletes all the time, right? And so by the time they're on center court in tennis or whatever sport it is, they've experienced those renewing emotions so much, and their body has, that they're already wired for that.
Is it a heart map that you were talking about, or is it heart math?
Heart math. So they're definitely one of the modalities. So the Heart Math Institute, God, they're probably around 40 years old, and they've studied the relationship between the heart and the brain. And a lot of people don't know this, but the heart actually sends more information to the brain than the other way around. And so one of the most powerful ways to regulate and get into coherence is when you put the energy and you put your attention in the area of the heart and you change your heart rhythms, it actually sends different neural signals to the brain that optimize key brain centers, right? So there's a lot of different, people can meditate and still be in a stress response. They can do yoga and still be in a stress response, right? If they're thinking about things, activating the cortisol, the adrenaline. But with heart math research, there's a couple ways you can get into this coherent state. It's one, doing the heart focused breathing. And two is when you actually feel a positive renewing emotion, there is this shift in the body where there's like 1,400 biochemical changes, and you actually start to create these magical hormones, including DHEA, which is the vitality hormone. And when people start to allow themselves to feel these positive renewing emotions, right, over and over, and they start to create DHEA and these, we see really incredible things happen to their health, emotionally, physically, on all levels.
Right. You mentioned heart-centered breathing. Now, when I was in anatomy and physiology, like your heart didn't breathe your lungs. So is it a metaphor to focusing on bringing your attention to that area when you're breathing?
So wherever you put your attention in the body, right, that's where the energy goes. And I'm 90% sure, like let's say you focused on your right pinky and you put all your attention there, more blood would flow there, right? And so when you actually focus in the area of the heart, right, it creates the energy there and the focus. And so, yeah, it's metaphorical, but yes, that's what happens.
My name is Paul. Hi, everyone. I live in San Francisco. I've been coming to the ranch since 1985. This is my 25th week at the ranch since then. When I came in 1985, I had never stretched before, aside from simple runner stretches. And in particular, the hike in those days was up some switchbacks to the crest of a hill over behind me. And I thought I would die going up that hill. I had to stop 8 or 9 times to catch my breath. I couldn't understand who these people were who just went loping up the hill. Long story short, I came back 2 years later. I had lost 10% of my body weight, which is still gone. I had taken better care of myself from things I learned here at the ranch. And I went up that same trail the first day without stopping. That's when it hit me. I looked back at the ranch from up on top and I said, you know, this stuff really works. I came back 4 months later. Then I got my family to come, and we had family reunions here over the years. The ranch is near and dear to my heart. I'll be signing up today to come back again next year, and I'm already anxious to be back.
I hope you're enjoying today's podcast as much as I am. To learn more about our wonderful presenters and exciting weeks coming up at the ranch, go to rancholaporta.com and check out our events calendar. Make sure to mention the podcast when making your reservation to take advantage of a special offer. Some restrictions may apply.
It is kind of a new concept. I mean, that you said 40 years that they've been around, but that the heart is more significant than just pumping blood for us.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because, like, metaphorically for thousands of years, the heart has been a symbol of like wisdom and love, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah.
What's interesting is our heart actually has a magnetic field that can now be measured by a magnetometer. And so Heart Math and other organizations have done a lot of studies where they have gotten people into coherence, and they've actually measured it affecting others to get into coherent state. So an example is they were working with a technology company in Northern California, and it was 40 people, and they broke up into groups of 4. So there's 10 groups of 4. In each group, 3 of the 4 were taught how to get into coherence, right? Through the heart focused breathing, creating a positive or ruining emotion. And they were measured by these HRV devices. And when they were instructed to get into this coherent state, a high percentage of the time, the 4th person in the group that had no idea what was going on would actually get into a coherent state. So think how powerful that is, that not only when we work with clients, we talk about how important it is to own our own potential and really learn how to self-regulate, right? Including awareness of thoughts and emotions. But when we actually get into this coherent state, we truly affect others in a scientific way to have them get into a more coherent state.
No, I think that's amazing. But I also want to go back. What is a coherent state? I heard you talk about that before. What does it mean exactly?
That's a great question. Heart math would say it's kind of when the heart, the brain, right, the body are aligned, or physiologically when the nervous, hormonal, immune systems are in a state of energetic coordination. I think of it as our optimal operational state. And really, even to simplify it more, it's when we go from a stress response to this more optimal state.
What is an optimal state? Is that when your blood pressure is good, when you're calm, when you're homeostasis? Is that what optimum state would be?
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what a non-coherent state is, and then we'll go into the coherent. So when we're in a stress response, right, fight or flight, what happens is it literally impairs key brain centers, right? And so our ability to think clearly, communicate, problem solve, have empathy, and connect with other people are literally limited, right? It limits the frontal cortex and these other things. It's just science. And also, when we are in that stress response, it's creating the adrenaline, the cortisol. I keep saying that, but it's such a big thing. And it becomes disruptive to our bodies because our bodies start to think need to be in survival mode. And so it turns off sort of other functions of the body to regenerate and to heal. And so when we can teach somebody, the first piece is just having awareness of being in that stress response. And I say that it sounds simple, but 95% of our thoughts are being run by the subconscious. And so what's happened is this stress response is becoming the normal state. So people, when we do these assessments, these health assessments, they think their low level of anxiety is their baseline. Like that's their normal state. And we're like, no, like you don't want to be in that state. So when they can recognize the stress response and they can do the heart focused breathing and just having awareness of it and even choosing to choose different thoughts, right, and create different emotions, then they get into this coherent state, which does, regulates the blood pressure, the heart rate. Again, it starts to access our frontal cortex, right? So that we can think more clearly, problem solve, communicate. And the ability to go from this stress response to this more coherent state is more important than ever. We are living in such a fast-paced world, and it's not changing, right? We have clients say, "Oh, well, when the election's over, I'll get regulated." When pandemic, this is the new world. And there's a guy named Astro Teller who's CEO of Google, or used to be Google X. I think it's called X now. And he basically said something like, for the first time in human history, we as humans are not equipped to keep up with the changes in technology. And so one of the things we talk about with our clients from Google to PwC, very analytical types, is if we don't upgrade our human operating system, not only are we not going to thrive, but we're not going to survive. We're literally going to implode the way we've set up the world. And so the only way we can do that is each person taking ownership of their own potential, right? And that includes being able to get out of the stress response. It means having greater awareness of our thoughts and emotions. Because again, without that, then we can't use the tools and techniques to shift into this more coherent state. Now, the beautiful thing is the way we get into a stress response or baseline where that's been conditioned for years and years and years, when we start to choose different decisions, right? We choose to get into coherent state and we choose to look at things differently, then it actually creates new behaviors, new baselines that actually serve us.
I've heard that before, that, so many of our thoughts have come from the subconscious, and so our emotions would follow. So what changes the subconscious? Is it just repetition?
Yes. And we're both fans of Dr. Dispenza. So,
Yes.
he always, we share a lot of this information. We've got 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% are the same as the day before. 70 to 80%, right, are either harmful or negative. And then you got 95% running subconscious. So if we are not conscious of our thoughts, then we're recreating the known past into a predictable future, right? It's Bill Murray and Groundhog Day every day.
Right.
But when we are conscious of our thoughts and we intentionally replace these negative or harmful thoughts with more positive ones, it's called cognitive restructuring. And so every time we replace the negative thought with a more positive one, then we start to create new neural networks that then create new behaviors, new baselines, new beliefs. And that's a big piece of it. One of the things we do with clients all the time, which you've experienced even in our trainings, is we will ask them, what's an ongoing stressor in your life, right? And then what are the emotions and how do you react in a suboptimal way? And we'll do it over and over and over, because what happens is it creates deeper awareness that when that stressor comes up a day later, a week later, a month later, they have more awareness to actually say, okay, I remember the conversation, the exercise we did, and I'm actually going to try out and choose a different way to show up. And every time you do that, you create new neural networks. And also, most of the time, like when you make those different choices, you get positive feedback coming back to you that then allows for it to be safe to continually to have the courage to make different decisions that serve you.
Something that I think I heard you say, maybe it wasn't you, but someone, is that the stress is held in your body, not in the circumstances. And I think that it's a good way to think more positively about it, because you're in control of everything going on inside of you, regardless of what's happening on the outside. So, and if you know what's going to happen, I think that's what you're saying. If you prepared yourself for what's going to happen, you can prepare your internal dialogue as well.
Yes, that was a game changer when I heard it, because I already knew it, but that was from Shebakar at Heart Math.
That's great.
Yeah. So the good news is, like you said, stress lives in the body and not in the circumstance. We can't always change our external circumstances, but we can always change our physiology, right? Through the breathing, through choosing different thoughts. And it's really powerful, because even with a lot of the CEOs I work with, we get into this mode where we think we're a victim, like to the circumstance, and these external things are happening. But they start to have the realization of when they're stressed out. It could be writing an email. It could be in a heated battle with one of their kids. When they're actually like, okay, stress is living in my body. It's like the Matrix, right? Then go to the present moment. And then I just ask them to ask themselves, is there a different way they can show up and how they want to feel in that situation? So it brings them to that present moment, that conscious moment. And then they're like, oh, I'm going to breathe, and I'm going to show up calm, and I'm going to be supportive. And they realize it's 100% in our control. And then what's cool is they start to see different outcomes in those external circumstances. So they see their kids like look at them and just start to calm down or apologize for the first time. I'll tell you how powerful it is we are always affecting each other. And we've worked with autistic communities where we've trained the parents. And after the parents were trained in some of these tools and techniques, even after 2 or 3 weeks, they came back and told us that their kids are being affectionate or speaking for the first time in their lives.
So for for the normal person or someone who's watching us or listening to us, could you give them like maybe 2 tips of things that they can start to do to change their lives?
Absolutely. I'll give, can I do 4 or 5?
You can do as many as you want. I was just making it easy. I was making it easy on you, but yeah, sure.
So I think the first thing is when you wake up is just set the intentions of how you want to show up. Yeah, it's just set the intentions of like, here are the things and, what do you want to create for the day? And it just starts to connect that you are the creator.
And I'm guessing when you say wake up and set your intention, it's not like I'm gonna try not to be a jerk today. That's not the positive kind of intention, right?
No, more positives of, so it could be could be around food, right? It could be around I'm gonna exercise. It could be when I'm with my boss, I'm gonna be present, right? And look at the learning experiences, right? It could be whatever's relevant within your world. Also, doing 3 things you're grateful for in the morning. Gratitude is such a powerful emotion, creates magical chemicals in the body. And even as we've studied, the monks in Tibet, right? Like when they get in states of gratitude, they create these amazing brain waves called gamma. They can do superhuman things. The second thing is do the heart focused breathing, right? Or what we call the quick coherence by heart math. Doing it throughout the day allows for you to get back into this coherent state and reset the nervous system. And every time you do it, the more and more you do it, then that starts to become your new baseline, right? And the mundane of doing the tools and techniques every day lead to the magical and miraculous, right? That is, you've got to do it. You've got to integrate it. And so I always tell clients, you can't measure it day by day, measure it month by month or quarter by quarter, and it becomes transformational. Another one is being aware of when you have negative loops, like thinking, or you're feeling negative emotion, and allow for yourself to actually connect with positive memories throughout the day also. We say it's better than Botox, right? You can, you think about your dog, your daughter, being at the ranch, right? And to be able to connect with that is so powerful, gets you in the coherent state, right? And it just maximizes all these beautiful things. Right. And then one other is at the end of the day, just do it like an evaluation, do a checklist of here are the 3 things I was proud of that flowed. And here are 3 things maybe I could show up differently to create awareness of that. And if you just do these 4 or 5 things, it is a game changer that has significant impact over time.
You had mentioned heart-centered breathing. So for people like, for example, would it be, say, 5 breaths 3 times a day where you focus on breathing slowly, breathing into your heart center?
So depending on how much time they have, I would say if ideally, right, in the morning, if you do it from 3 to 5 minutes, afternoon and before bed, like that would be powerful. And, with the research through HeartMath and others, the 5 seconds in and 5 seconds out, there's some alignment that like that's the perfect formula with the body. I know there's a lot of different thinking with box breathing and others, but so I would say, 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, afternoon, at night, and then either have a timer or count 5 in, 5 out. But also where the magic happens is, we live in a society where we go from Zoom to Zoom call, meeting to meeting. And when we start to have clients just do 30 seconds of the heart focused breathing before every meeting or call, it recenters them. And then they're not sort of on autopilot. And it's like gives them a rest and they get to show up present in a more authentic place every time they do that.
Yeah. I mean, that's to me, that's a doable thing for people to do. And it makes such a huge, huge difference. And it's not such a suck on your time. It's pretty doable, right?
Very much.
When will I see you at the ranch again?
I'm hoping September, October with bringing Raymundo Benton with me. So
Wonderful.
And hoping we can do
look forward
a team session also.
Yeah.
And I
Awesome.
love the ranch. I love it. It's one of my favorite places. I know it's not a commercial for the ranch, but I set the intention last year to go there 3 to 4 times a year because it is such a refresh. And I literally have created new businesses there. It's so inspirational, the energy. So yeah, my goal is 3 to 4 times a year. So thank you.
Great. Well, I'll look forward to seeing you. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to talk to us. And then I'll see you in a couple months then, for sure. So thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
I enjoyed our conversation today with Jeff. It reminded me of a phrase that I've often heard: how you do one thing is how you do everything. So how we control our internal environments is often how we control our external environments. How I talk to myself is how I talk to others. Expectations I have of myself is often expectations I have from other people. One of my key takeaways today is Jeff reminded us that stress doesn't live in circumstances or objects. Stress lives in us. When I misplace my cell phone is not trying to cause me stress. My cell phone is peacefully waiting for wherever I left it. I'm creating all that stress within myself. So having an awareness of that is a game changer. One of the tools that he gave us was to breathe into your heart nice and slow. Say 5 times. So when I get in a stressful situation, try that. Breathe in and out. It returns your body to a more homeostasis state. And when you're calm on the inside, you can better control the outside environment. So the next time you get stuck in traffic, next time you're in line, be aware that those people slowly in front of you in line or that traffic, they're not even aware of us. They're not creating stress. We're creating the stress within us. Until next time, this is Barry, wishing you health and daily joy.